throughout ATV history. There has perhaps never been a more perfect sport machine for its time than Honda's ATC200X. It was the ultimate fun machine for the masses.
Oh man, the 200X, that's some of my best memories of the 80s. I think I had one of every machine, the 83, 84, 85, 86, and it was just a blast. That thing, you could get one for $1,700 bucks, it seemed like, and to this day, that's probably one of my favorite machines of all time.
For many, it became the machine of choice for racing.
It is, on Saturday nights in the Northwest, one of the most competitively contested classes on the local ATVA circuit.
For a select few, it paved the way for racing careers of legendary status.
I basically started off on a borrowed 185S, and by the end of '82, the 200X came out, and that was a game changer.
Developed to boost dealer sales during slower winter months, Honda released their first three-wheeled ATV, the US 90, in 1970. In 1971, the US 90 was rebadged as the All-Terrain Cycle, or ATC-90. In 1979, the ATC-90 was replaced by the marginally improved ATC-110. In 1980, Honda released the ATC-185, which was built for utility and recreational enthusiasts. In 1981, the ATC-185 split into two segments. First, there was the work-focused ATC200. The other new machine for 1981 was the ATC-185S. While it retained some capacity as a work machine, the 185S featured enhanced performance for the recreational rider. While it shared its engine with the original ATC-185, it featured a more compact chassis, redesigned plastic, and lighter 3-inch smaller 22-inch tires. In 1981, Honda also introduced the legendary ATC250R, the first mass-produced high-performance ATV in history. Its two-stroke engine wasted any other production ATV of the time, and it was the first mass-produced three-wheeler with front and rear suspension. Thanks to its release, the racing scene rapidly grew across the country. The 250R was a machine you could buy from your local Honda dealer and go racing, in a sport currently dominated by custom-built one-off machines.
The all-new, all-excitement ATC 250R.
Well, the Hondas are by far the best machines built yet. They came out with the 250 after we've been racing all our 90s with no suspension and everything, and it was getting to be a pretty big thing, so they designed this ATC with the suspension and all the trick stuff, and it's race-ready stock.
Racers Curtis Sparks and Tommy Guillen remained in the 180 or 200cc classes in '81 and '82, cleaning up in major events around the country on custom-built Nick Nicholson ATC 185S with full suspension chassis. During '81 and '82, mildly modified and custom-built 185S ran against custom-built featherweight full suspension ATC 90s and 110s built to 180 cc's. Two-stroke Yamaha Trimoto 175s were being converted to full suspension. There were also a number of dirt bike-based three-wheeler hybrids, with the 1982 ATC 200 and 200E Big Red designed for work, and the ATC 110 and 70 focused on recreation. Honda knew they needed something besides the 185S to bridge the gap between their recreational models and the high-performance 250R. Based on what they'd learned from the ATC 250R, 185S, and their successful XR line of 4-stroke off-road dirt bikes, they developed the first pure sport 4-stroke ATV, the 1983 Honda ATC 200X. The 200X 2-valve single overhead cam engine was based on the 185S, with a focus on increased performance. Its displacement was bumped up from 180 to 192 cc's, and compression was raised from 8.1 to 9.2 to 1. The X received a more aggressive cam and 2mm larger 24mm carburetor. Air was drawn from an intake in the frame mounted high by the steering stem, making it a virtual submarine. The engine's biggest performance advantage came from switching from an auto clutch to a manual clutch-equipped 5-speed transmission. As 4-stroke ATVs went, the Honda 200X engine was high performance for its time. but was behind the times when it came to engine design, with 4-valve heads dating back to the 1970s in some Honda XR dirt bikes. The 200X brand new chassis and suspension made it the first fully suspended mass-produced 4-stroke 3-wheeler, and its handling rivaled that of the 81 to 82 250R. The 200X featured a 41.3-inch width, 47.6-inch wheelbase, and a 27.8-inch seat height. Its dimensions were pretty similar to that of the 82 250Rs, with the exception of being 1 inch narrower. The air-adjustable forks delivered 7.3 inches of travel. Its linkageless rear suspension featured a reservoir-equipped shock with spring preload and 4-way rebound adjustment, yielding 6.7 inches of travel. Compared to the 1982 250R, the 1983 200X had 0.6 of an inch more front and 2.4 inches more rear suspension travel. The X also benefited from larger diameter forks that flexed notably less. 22 by 11 inch rear tires were mounted on 8-inch rims. The 23.5 by 8-inch front tire was mounted on an 11-inch rim. The front tire was 1.5 inches taller and 3 inches narrower than that used on the 82 250R, to improve directional control and roll more smoothly through bumps. The 200X was stopped by hydraulic disc brakes at both ends, another first for a 4-stroke ATV. Despite its 4-stroke engine design, at 282.2 pounds, the 200X was 15.5 pounds lighter than the 2-stroke 1982 250R. At $1,698, the affordable 1983 200X was an instant success. It was nearly the perfect machine for less experienced riders, younger brothers, or even the girlfriend, yet it still provided enough performance that even highly experienced riders couldn't help having a blast riding one.
So your family can have 100 different kinds of fun.
By the end of '82, the 200X came out, and that was a game changer because that had the full suspension, solid machine, beefy. You know, it wasn't this aftermarket stuff that we've been running. It was a week before the qualifier again that I bought the machine and went out there with 11 horsepower against Curtis's 20 horsepower 200X and took second again in the qualifier. So Monday morning, called Powerroll and told them I just needed a little bit more horsepower and I thought I could beat Team Honda. So went out to the Kingdom race, I hole shotted it and didn't look back. I ended up winning it. Was the first person to go out and beat Team Honda in the 200 class, so that got me pretty pumped. That was the biggest race of my life and my dream come true. We went to Oklahoma City about 2 weeks after that and I won again, 2 in a row. So after 3 or 4 times of winning on the 200X against Honda, they called Powerroll and offered us bikes and parts so they could use my name in their win ads.
At major motocross and TT events in 1983, Honda-backed 200X pilots Curtis Sparks, Mickey Dunlap, Tommy Guillen, and Steve Wright were the guys to beat. In 1984, Kawasaki released the high-performance 2-stroke Ducati 250 to challenge Honda's totally redesigned 1983 ATC 250R.
They hired me full-time as in '84. I raced the 200X most of the year, but then Kawasaki had been building some faster and faster 202 strokes, and Jimmy White and I were having some pretty good battles at a bunch of the nationals, and come down to the Baja Cross Championship, and I only beat him by 1 point. So Honda got on the stick, and they built some $30,000 works bikes, 202 stroke. One-off machines, sand-casted motors, but they put them in the 200X frame, and so it was a rocket ship. It was lighter than the 200X, but it still had the handling of a 200X, and it was really fast. They were fast as the 252 strokes. In fact, they said faster lap times on the TT courses with them because they're so light.
It didn't take long for aftermarket companies like Selby's Performance, CT Racing, and Northwest Sleeve to get into the business of turning Honda and Kawasaki 250s into 200s. Tricky Dicks built hybrid machines, converting 190cc Cagiva WMX 250 dirt bikes into 3-wheelers to contest the 200cc class. Small Minnesota-based manufacturer Tiger fired up in 1984, doing limited production runs of various displacement Rotex-powered two-strokes, including a 200.
I've probably swung a leg over every three-wheeler ever, including the Tigers and the Kajivas and everything. Like a Kajiva was really fast, and it was cool, but at the end of the day, I could do better lap times on my 200X because I wasn't tired. It handled better. It had that smooth four-stroke power, nothing yanking you out of your arms like the two-stroke kind of did, and I just enjoyed the 200X.
By 85, they took and separated the 202 strokes and the four strokes, so I was supposed to race for Honda on the 200X in the 85. Honda said I had to move to California or I wasn't going to race for them, and so I didn't want to leave Oregon. I had a great track there, had a great facility, I loved the country. Powerol decided we were going back to the 200Xs. They paid my expenses, my win monies were coming from the sponsors in.
Number 43, Curtis Sparks, is your early leader.
So we went back after Curtis in 85 and beat him first time out.
For amateurs, many events offered a 200cc stock class, providing extremely competitive and very affordable racing, something that's been sadly missing from the sport ever since.
Raced the Blackwater 100 with it, and then each week we'd go to Deerfield Speedway and I'd make money with the little 200. And that was some great memories. Who does that at age 15 or whatever I was, going and making money more than you'd make in a job? I'd come home with a bunch of cash from racing my 200X.
Throughout the early and mid-1980s, Honda's R&D team was working at a pace never seen before or since in the sport ATV industry. After releasing a completely new ATC200R in 1983, they did it again in 1985. That same year, Honda also released the high-performance four-stroke ATC350X, with a brand new 250R and 350X in 1985. 200cc class riders and racers were overdue for an updated 200X, which Honda delivered in 1986. For 1986, the ATC200X was brand new from the ground up. The frame was switched from a round tube to a box tube design for increased strength and rigidity. The 86 was widened 1.2 inches to 43.5 inches, while the seat was raised 9/10 of an inch to 28.7 inches. New suspension featured revised settings and increased wheel travel, up 3/10 of an inch front and 9/10 of an inch rear, to 7.6 inches at both ends. A new swing arm featured Honda's easy-to-adjust round housing chain adjustment system, replacing the much more convoluted setup from previous years. The rear tires went from a 22/11/8 to a 22/11/9, reducing their profile for improved handling. The 86 engine featured a small increase in horsepower and torque, although it retained a relatively low-tech 2-valve head design. Displacement was increased from 192 to 199 cc's, thanks to an increase in stroke from 57.8 to 60 millimeters. A switch to a 6-speed transmission tightened the gear ratios on the Little Thumper, and a 24mm carburetor delivered the gas. Although the 86 model produced a bit more power out of the box, both Dunlap and Sparks raced the Generation 1 200X throughout most of the 86 season.
Powerol, we did a magazine article on the 85 200X versus the 86. And the 86 had great suspension, but the head design on it didn't allow us to make the horsepower, so we were down 2 or 3 horsepower, about 10%. And I thought I could win on it on the rough motocrosses like the ORV Park. Is the first time I raced it there.
The final lap for Curtis Sparks.
And the suspension didn't do me any good. The horsepower was still a key factor, and Curtis beat me on that. That was the last time I let him do that.
Last time we saw Mickey here back in Porterville put on a stunning performance. How'd the rest of the year go, Mick?
It went real well for us. We ended up taking second in the Grand National class, mainly because we didn't stay in the class all year long. I was riding for Kawasaki at the first of the year, so we ended up doing pretty good, though. Real well against Curtis.
I went back to race my 85 model through the rest of 86, and then of course we jumped to the 87. We went to quad racing.
As a machine with such a rich history that's still being enjoyed by many riders today, the Honda ATC200X was a classic we knew we had to put to the test. we had both generations represented. First, we had a 1984 with some minor restorations and upgrades to bring it up to review-worthy status in nearly stock condition. We also had a 1986 200X, which was mostly stock, with the exception of wheel spacers, different tires, exhaust, and a hotter cam. It was basically the equivalent of what one might have raced back in the day at the local level. Our 84 model was kept close to the level of performance one would experience right off the dealer's showroom floor. To ensure a tight, wobble-free ride, we installed new bearings from all balls in the swing arm, axle carrier, head tube, and front wheel hub. Replacing the stock, rusty, and broken rear grab bar was a new aluminum alloy series grab bar from DG Performance. For the engine, a brand new cam chain from DID quieted its top-end rattles and ensured reliability. Our X's clutch pull and power transfer were made light, smooth, and like new, thanks to a new custom-made clutch cable from Barnett and a new Barnett clutch kit, including new springs, metal plates, and Kevlar friction plates. Replacing the ratty-looking stock exhaust was a sharp-looking, meaner-sounding, and better-performing RCM aluminum silencer and steel head pipe from DG Performance. To keep power close to stock, in spite of the DG exhaust, we left the airbox lid installed, keeping the intake side restrictive. From Rocky Mountain ATV, a primary drive 520 O-ring chain and steel sprockets with stock 1340 gearing freshened up the drivetrain, while Tusk brake pads helped bring braking performance back to life. Renthal vintage desert bend bars provide the wide clamping area needed for the 200X bar clamps. We trimmed them down for a better fit. Full diamond ATV grips are easy on the hands and easy to hold onto. We swapped out the overweight trail tires that came on our third owner 200X for a set of size, weight, and era appropriate 22/11/8 2-ply knobby tires, providing performance similar to the stock tires. We met up with test riders Rob Ray and Shannon Roberts and his 86 200X at Haspen Acres in Laurel, Indiana. Haspen Acres is home of Trike Fest, the largest annual gathering of three-wheeled enthusiasts in the country. Haspen offers the perfect mix of terrain to put these machines to the test. With our 84 model closest to stock, we are primarily focusing on evaluating its performance, while comparing the two machines when possible. The 200X is easy to kick over. Cold starts are not a problem, however the engine becomes temperamental when hot. The 86 model's higher mounted Kickstarter prevents you from stomping the ground at the bottom of the stroke. While the cockpit on the 86 is perhaps a bit more spacious, both machines' foot pegs are rather narrow and uncomfortable. Compared to riding modern ATVs, both machines feel a little on the small side. We could see them being a great fit for younger or smaller riders, which makes sense as they were originally recommended for riders age 14 and up. As was typical of three-wheelers, the seat height is rather low, keeping your center of gravity down for corners while providing a real leg workout on rough tracks or trails, where you often transfer from sitting to standing. The engine's magic starts happening right off idle. The little four-stroke delivers more torque than you might expect from an engine of this size, despite producing a modest 10.5 horsepower in stock trim, according to 4Stroke Tech. The engine's outstanding low-end torque, low rolling resistance of a three-wheeler, and light 282.2-pound weight let the 200X get moving pretty quickly. The X engine seems virtually unstoppable, chugging your way up steep hills as long as you're not in deep sand. The engine will happily plug along a gear high, allowing you to casually cruise along at lower RPMs. When it's time to throw it sideways and rip out of turns, shift down a gear. Good mid-range power allows you to carry slides out of corners and keeps things entertaining as the trail opens up. The 200X is definitely fast enough to have fun with, even for experienced riders, especially when you have two X's to dice it out on. While you might struggle to keep up with an ATC200R or performance four-wheeler in wide open spaces, both of our X's could easily smoke the CVT-equipped four-wheeler we had on hand, and would probably give the 250X or 300EX a run for their money. Mid-range power isn't quite as impressive as the low end, and by the time you reach the top third of the RPM range, it's time to upshift. With a 2-valve head, the 200X doesn't rev especially fast or pull very high in the RPMs. So by Honda placing the best part of the power low in the RPM range, they really made the most of the engine's simplistic design. Adding a close ratio 6-speed to the 86-87 model made the engine more effective. We found shifting pretty smooth and precise on both models despite their age. The 200X suspension was good at its time and does an okay job by today's standards. On the trail, the X suspension takes out the square-edged bumps that could really unsettle a fully rigid three-wheeler. It's plush and clearly focused on trail riding and lighter riders. You'll quickly discover the suspension's limits hammering through whoops, although both machines remain pretty manageable for our experienced riders. When it came to jumping, precise landings were a must, even on smaller, forgiving doubles. Overshoot it or come up short, and the suspension bottoms harshly at both ends, with the rear shock seeming to find its limits first. In rough chop, big hits, and jump landings, the 86-87 suspension enjoyed a small advantage in performance, finding the limits of its travel less often. It takes a lot of rider skill to make a three-wheeler handle well. If you have the skill, the ATC200X is a good handling three-wheeler. Steering is pretty predictable with a little front-end push, perhaps due to our riders being a little too tall for the machine, forcing their weight to be carried too far back. There's enough front-end snap to crank the rear end around for slides, yet at higher speeds, steering feels pretty predictable and manageable, compared to other three-wheelers, of course. Whether you're pitching it sideways in the loose stuff, or railing a berm hooked up, with its low seat height and lots of body English from the rider, the 200X can get you through turns pretty quickly, in spite of its narrow width. When the trail turns uphill, the 200X is a capable climber. Its high-torque engine, low center of gravity, and 47.6-inch wheelbase allow you to crawl up hills with less body English than you might expect, especially on a machine that's so willing to wheelie on demand. Three-wheelers are most difficult to handle under heavy braking and on steep descents. With its narrower width, the 200X keeps you on your toes on rough, steep downhills. As a smaller machine, the instability problem grows with taller, heavier riders, raising the overall center of gravity of both man and machine. With compact dimensions and light, nimble handling, the 200X seems most in its element on tight, twisty trails, the same areas where its engine feels most impressive. The good handling manners of this three-wheeler are undoubtedly partly due to the fact that its engine is so smooth, delivering its goods low in the RPMs with no surprises later on to get you in over your head. With a Generation 1 machine weighing in at 282.2 pounds, the single-piston caliber hydraulic disc brakes found on both machines do a good job of scrubbing off speed. Other notable details abound on these machines, like clamp-on air filters and airbox lids that can be removed without tools. Even with its very reasonable asking price, Honda managed to use good quality lightweight aluminum wheels and high-quality plastic bodywork that's resisted cracking for more than 3 decades. Come to think of it, these entire machines have been proven to be well engineered and manufactured. The proof is in the fact that there are still so many readily available on the used market today. As a culture of individuals, growing more unwilling to accept personal responsibility for our own decisions and actions, lawsuits were rapidly mounting against the three-wheeler industry from injured riders. As a huge leader in sales and marketing, Honda was especially affected. By 1986, the inevitable end of three-wheelers seemed apparent. The 200X remained as the only sport three-wheeler in Honda's lineup in 1987. With the signing of the consent decree that year, the major manufacturers agreed to stop selling three-wheeled ATVs in the United States. And so, production of Honda's ATC200X came to an end.
Sparks got that thing sideways about 40 feet before the corner comes up. It looks like it's 43 Sparks in the lead.
The performance of Honda's ATC200X was unlike any production four-stroke ATV before it. One could argue that its balance of affordability, reliability, and most of all fun is unlike anything that's come along since.
I had that thing down where I didn't need to let off. I would push off the throttle and be able to just click it down a gear and hang off the thing, pitch it sideways, and just run that machine hard as it could go. Sometimes I wouldn't use the clutch, just pounding the hell out of that little 200, and it just took everything I had.
Today, the 200X is still putting smiles on the faces of first-time riders, and riders who have ridden or raced them for decades.
Well, my dad, Lee Marker, he started racing a couple years ago. For Christmas, my dad bought it for me, and I was super pumped. I was really excited to get it and just ready to get it out on the track.
With lots of parts still available on the new and used market, and so many good running 200Xs still out there for under $1,000. Even today, it's hard to have more fun for less money than the 200X provides. That's why we feel the 1983 to 1987 Honda ATC200X is truly a classic, worth picking up and restoring.